Good evening and welcome to another edition of Choose to Challenge. I'm LaWanna Bradford with the Bradford Group and the Bradford Group Consulting. And for those of you who are wondering, what is Choose to Challenge? Choose to Challenge is a platform designed to bring messages, to expand your thinking, to cause you to question systems, norms, including even some of your own mindsets that have caused you to create the life that you're living. And some of you may think, I didn't create this. Well, I'm excited because this conversation with our guest, Stephen White, who is the author of the graphic novel, Ancient Futures, we're going to get into the conversation about Ancient Futures, Are You Living Your Dope Life? How's it going, Stephen?
It's going great, LaWanna. I'm so happy to be on Choose to Challenge, and I am choosing to challenge. I'm challenging your listeners and watchers. We're going to challenge people today.
Well, before we jump into this conversation that may feel a little comfortable for some people, why don't you tell us a little bit about who is Stephen and why Ancient Futures at this time?
All right. So thank you. I'm happy to talk a little bit about who is Stephen, right? So I grew up in the Southwest, son of, as we call ourselves, Army brats. My dad was in the military. So I grew up on military bases in interesting places around the country. Fort Meade, Maryland, where the NSA is. Colorado Springs, where NORAD missile base is. And lovely Fort Huachuca, home of the Buffalo Soldier. And also the home of the intelligence training schools and some other things. So I say that to say that my upbringing grew up in the shadow of the military industrial complex, which can bring some intrigue right into your life. That's not a normal upbringing. LaWanna, you were in many of those places as well. And so I grew up and with the love of reading and a love of books, and found myself during the pandemic being challenged to embark on something new, right? So sometimes things that interrupt our lives can push us forward into challenging situations.
I love how you put that. Sometimes things that disrupt our lives can put us into, let's call it challenging situations, but even opportunities, right? Doors open. Mm-hmm. And I know just in speaking to women within the community and beyond, many of them found themselves pivoting. You know, that was like the word of 2020, to the point that I started going on speaking engagements where I was talking about, okay, let's stop talking about the pivot. Let's talk about repositioning to remain relevant. Mm-hmm. But the only way you can remain relevant is if you are true and authentic to who you are.
Yes.
And with your book, Ancient Futures, there's a message about choices. There's a message about learning from our past and aspiring to the future, but also embracing the power of the now. Can you take us through that journey?
Yeah, great. Yeah, thanks. So let's start off with embracing the past, because if you're going to challenge yourself, if you're going to really try to make a change in your life, you need to have a hard reckoning with yourself. And part of that reckoning is to realize that you've probably been walking through your life unconscious and brainwashed for a big portion of your life. There's a reason why the driving age for insurance companies in renting a car is 25 years old. Science has shown that our brains are not even fully developed for multitasking and things until 25, right? So we don't stop developing when we're 18. There are stages of adult development too, but I think if you're trying to change your life, most of us don't go through the rigor of examining who we are. By the time you become 25, by the time you're an adult, you're the product of multiple systems that ladder up into a culture, right? You know, you're born into a family you didn't choose, a religion you didn't choose, a political system you didn't choose, an educational system you didn't choose. The American public education system was designed to teach people to work in factories. Like, is that the aspirational life? Like, that's what that training was for. And that now that has morphed into our modern system. And I could go on and on about the other things. And I posed this question to a group of designers at my grad school. And out of 50 people, I said, who thinks that they're living as a free agent of their life at this point? Nobody would raise their hands. But yet they weren't incensed. So that's why messages like the Matrix are so important. That's why they strike a chord, because people, you need to realize that unless you've taken a look at where you're coming from, you are a product of all these systems. So don't you want to know who you are? Disconnected from those things. So the message of Ancient Futures is, look at this crazy world around us. It's time to unplug and get to your own self and figure out who you are. And what's your ancient heritage? We're much more than our job. We're much more than what money we make. We are part of a beautiful creation. We have this beautiful cosmos around us that's been built for us, and we're the ones that can appreciate it and understand it. So I try to get people to kind of go back to kind of those fundamental things about yourself and loving yourself even, and appreciating yourself. I mean, this is a message for Valentine's Day. My main character's name is Valentino Cruz, right? I'm a wordsmith. I came up in branding and advertising and writing, and I didn't even understand the significance of the name until it was broken down to me in a dream. Valentino, the heart, right? The cross. Cruz is the cross, the heart and sacrifice. So when you need to start there. It starts with the heart. Is your heart happy doing what you're doing? Many people are changing their lives right now. And hopefully they're finding it for the better. I know that, the critics might say people are just, getting government money and things like that. There's two sides to every story, but there is no disputing that in this country and around the world, people are taking stock in just this way. People are questioning the system. People are questioning where they've come from and trying to reframe it too. It's not just about, everything about my past was bad. No, not at all. I love and I embrace, my past, but I now have a better perspective on it. And I had to rise above some of the things that I thought were limiting and reframe those things. So that's kind of that first step in the challenge is, really, who am I? And do I really know? And have I really stopped and paused to figure that out? In the old days, you have to go in the desert for 40 days and, all that. But, what are you doing to interrupt? Because you can't stop this train just by checking a few things off a list. Exactly. This is serious reflection that is needed to get down to those areas of heart and where I'm sacrificing.
There's a couple things that I wanted to bring up based on what you just said. We often hear, and this is again just some of those paradigms, we are some of our experiences.
Yes. So
yes, if I say that, then that's me. I just placed myself in a box, and I'm acknowledging that yes, this is me, and this is all I can be, because all I am is a sum of just what I've experienced. Whereas when you talk about, and I want you to read your poem about the first ancient, because if we truly believe that we are a sum of all of our experiences, we'll understand where that sits on the continuum of time.
Yeah, and thank you for that, because this poem is really something that was inspired to me in a dream almost, and it is really my realization, because when I looked around at a lot of friends, some people were in the Native Americans, my grandmother was Native American, or you knows they're this person in Africa, and I wanted to know what my heritage was, and I feel like the universe gave me this message that a lot of Ancient Futures comes out and it start. I'm not going to say it verbatim, but just give you a sampling. I am the first ancient, born of Ata. I bring worlds into existence through the power of sound. Om. Heavenly bodies become human temples through the power of the sun. Artist, magician, warrior, lover, my archetypes blend into one. I stand in a solar temple casting runes on walls of stone, the original warlock. I stand alone. I walk through catacombs of chromosomes wearing shades of ancient knowledge, tinted yellow and orange. My blood is color-coded by the science of the sun. Artist, warrior, magician, lover. My archetypes blend into one. So that for me was, I see my heritage as the ancient wise people, from hearkening back to Egypt and the high ancient cultures. In my dream, I saw myself walking with the wise people, wise men and women, writing on the high mathematics, looking at, and it's really the messages. Today, we have forgotten more than we've learned. We're on the down cycle. The Kali Yuga is a 26,000 year cycle we're on. We think we're so advanced, but the ancient cultures, they were at such another level in their consciousness and how they saw the world and their place in it. So for me, it was tremendously motivating to say, that's my heritage. So how do I bring that as my gift now, right? My gift now is ancient futures of trying to tell people, when a society reaches a point where it's so confused that it's falling apart, we go back to where we knew things, where we were safe, where there was an order. And for me, let's not forget the ancient knowledge. Let's bring that forward too. It's not just about what the future is. And I love Elon Musk and the singularity and AI. All that stuff is part of the drama, but it's also based on very old rules as well. It's just a different form of technology.
Right, because there's nothing new under the sun, right?
Exactly, nothing new under the sun.
Now, what would you say to our audience? Because we're bombarded with, the Army started the slogan, be all you can be, right?
Yeah.
But now it's be the best version of yourself. Be authentic. Remove the mask. Blah, 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 blah. Everyone's talking about it, but no one's telling you how to get there. How do you even identify, like you said, sitting into understanding who you are first? And then what does the best version look like? And here's a little tricky part of the question. Are we even adept enough to even see our future self?
Okay, so to be real with you, most people are not. Most people are not because they're not going to be willing to do what it takes. So for me, you want to talk about how to really do that, you need to separate yourself from the herd. We have a herd mentality. So you're not going to do anything innovative or even authentic when you're tied to the herd, right? Look at the programming power of social media. Just the fact, if you watch the news, if you're so plugged into the news all the time, that's the herd mentality, right? All the major media is traditional media, right? This may be an older message, right? But controlled by very few people, right? Powerful people with money are controlling our messaging as well. So for me, the first message is, how do you separate yourself from the herd? In the ancient cultures, the people that were the weirdos, the epileptics, the people that had visions, the dreamers, they were actually ostracized from the tribe, and they became the shamans, they became the healers, they became the wise people, because they were able to set themselves apart from the herd. Again, that's why you see in all the major religions, the leaders separate themselves. Jesus, John the Baptist, the prophet, there is a separateness that comes. Now, I'm not saying go shave your head, but you do have to have a in the world but not of the world mentality. If you're plugged into social media all the time, you're watching the news all the time, you're wrapped up into those things. These are things that are programs of our culture to keep us all in line. And LaWanna, I want to kind of veer off a little bit and kind of give an ancient reference to this. The ancient texts teach us that when God created humans, the other God said, this is going to be trouble. Like, these humans are going to investigate every little part of the creation. They're going to measure how far we are to the sun. They're going to create a Towers of Babel. They're going to try to get to us. And, the creator said, that's okay. They're our children. But what we can do, let's create the zodiac. We're going to create the zodiac that will govern the destinies of humans, right? And so the zodiac it keeps us all in lines, our destinies. Everyone has their stars and they follow these destinies, but we have the ability to break free from it. But to make it more practical, I believe that those zodiac systems, those astronomical forces, are reflected in our human culture, right? And they're reflected in our political system. We think we have choices, but it's this one or that. They're really the same thing. Our social media gives us these messages. Young girls are having body image issues because of how destructive these messages are, right? All these systems, right, are focusing us on working so much that we lose ourselves. So when you look at all of that, how can you do anything different if you're following along? So how do you unplug, right? People, there's ways, meditation, exercise, getting into nature, renewing in real life time with people. Like, we need to do things that connect us more, but then furthermore, really digging into how we think and looking how we can harness the power of our mind. Simply taking time to clarify and to pause. Like, there's certain ways we can harness our mind as well. So that's just a little bit into getting into how that I found. But I'll just pause there and see if you wanted to have any response there.
And I agree with what you're saying as far as unplugging and finding that way to, I like to say, tap into your divine self. And for me, it's going on my walks. My brother Harlan would say, LaWanna, it's so funny because it's like you're like Adam walking with God in the cool of the day. Yeah. But during that time, my mind is so clear and so open, have that same experience in the middle of the noise.
Right.
It wouldn't happen, or it would be very fractured that I wouldn't really understand the pieces. And sometimes I find, I'm going to speak specifically to the women, where we have a goal and then a year later, it's that same goal back on the table. We're like on that hamster wheel, we're spinning, but we haven't done anything differently. We say we want to change. We say that we're sick and tired of being sick and tired, but yet we're comfortable on the wheel.
Yeah, and I think one thing, especially for women, I've found in the workplace sometimes, and this is saying no. So, right, so part of maybe a simple way to get into separating from herd mentality is, when's the last time you said no? Right, there's funny viral video of like some people at a conference table at work, and someone's inviting them to a party, and everyone is like saying they're going to go and trying to say why they can't go and giving excuses, and then one young woman says, "Oh, I'm not going just because I don't want to." And people are like, "Oh, who actually says really the truth?" Right? So one of those things is like what I found for my career. Like, my career went. I went to grad school and I made some changes, but I struggled to start a new business. But I said no to a lot of things because I wanted to try to change where I was going. And even in my work now, being very clear with people and be able to say no at that level, maybe that's a great starter point for people to think about how I can start disconnecting, right? You know what? No, I'm not going to that, Disney on Ice for your nephew because I don't want to. I'll watch it on virtual, right? And then go and do some meditation or go work on your stuff. I think a lot of people are so obligatorily minded in doing things in a system that they don't have passion for, that I think the pandemic has helped us kind of interrupt some of those flows and see, okay, what do I do when I'm at my own devices, and what gives me joy? So I think changing that mindset that you always are at the behest of the culture, the system, even your family, sometimes you need to have boundaries. Setting boundaries and saying no, that might be enough for some people to work on for a long time. I'm still working on it.
Yeah, it's very liberating when you can say that and mean it, and it's like this is it. Because society can make us feel guilty if we say no. Society can make us feel guilty if we put ourselves first. And I'm not saying being selfish, but self-caring. Because if I don't care for myself, I can't pour from an empty cup.
Right. And let me give you an example of this, because this is kind of shows you how like having something like Ancient Futures has changed my life. Like I'm a big fan of Madeleine L'Engle, right? She wrote A Wrinkle in Time, and she talks about how when she became in her imaginative world, that the characters would speak to her and tell her what's going on, and like she would write kind of from that place, and I always admired that. And when I had more time to myself and time to ruminate in the pandemic, and I started writing this, I would just, whereas before the pandemic, I would come home from work and I'd watch, Billions or something for a couple hours and go to sleep, or I was always looking for outside entertainment. Now I've created this world where I can just sit back and write and think about what's, what they're doing, and you begin to see that it's almost like growing your own food. Like,
yeah.
Wouldn't it be cool if you could just entertain with yourself with your own creative pursuits or your own stuff, instead of always looking for external stimuli? And I feel like over time, I'm always now involved. Like I got my bass guitars over here, I've got my work, my creative stuff I'm doing. Like, how much more nurturing is it when you're communing with yourself and being entertained with yourself and your own pursuits, bringing friends over to play music I love to do and things like that, rather than, again, the mass media, the programming, the needless things that we do. So just a little, hopefully it can inspire you to, do something for yourself more and have that compassion and love to create that space for yourself. So it's these little things. It's not this big life change, but these little things, they lead you down a path to do that more and more.
Yeah, and it's like you said, it's the little things. It's like that tiny drop of water that after a while, it creates that crack that widens over time. But in that shift occurs in the mind, like you said, awareness, and then making a choice. Will Smith said the hardest thing that people have to do is make a choice.
Make a choice. Yeah. Yeah. And so, that's why I love your title, Are You Living Your Dope Life? So for me, and this is another testament to when you embark on a path, it opens up in ways that, just taking that first step allows you to begin to be exposed to different things. And for me, Ancient Futures has evolved into a message to people to live your dope life. What I mean by that is, what are you doing to kind of take steps to do something that excites you or makes you happy, right? And so that's the whole message of Dope Life, is kind of take charge. That's what we're choosing to challenge, right? So what are your objections? LaWanna, what's your objection? What do you hear, right? Oh, I don't have the time.
Yeah,
I don't have the
time. I don't have the money.
Don't have the money. You know what? The best things in life are free, and they don't take a lot of time, right? These things we're talking about don't take a lot of time. I remember a couple of years, I thought, okay, I'm dealing with a bit of anxiety and stuff, maybe I'm depressed and all that. And I went to somewhere and they said, well, you're not really depressed, but, you're wanting something different. So I got into transcendental meditation, and I said, well, I want to just start to see if I can control my mind more. And through that discipline of the meditation, twice a day for 20 minutes, it begins to open up a space. Like you said, it's not a lot of time it doesn't take. And you don't have to do it that much, but a little bit of focused effort. And even if you did it twice a day, or you just take time to pause before things. Breathing is very important. My mom is Larcinia White is a great teacher of breathing, and I'm also an advocate of yoga and breath. Just this getting into our breath is a way to get into our bodies. We're so mental, right? And we abuse our bodies because we're these big brains walking around. but we're going to live more harmonious and we're going to be easier if we can sink into our bodies through practices like breathing, meditation, and yoga. So all of these things counter kind of the bombardment, the blue ray environment, and the mind assault that we have. So just, again, being aware of where you're at, I think we're talking about that a lot, because nothing else matters if you don't kind of come to a starting point of, okay, let me be more aware of my environment, what I'm doing to myself. What am I eating? What am I ingesting mentally? Am I watching the news 6 hours a day? Am I taking in unhealthy media? What can I do to kind of modulate? And you know what? You've got time. You've got time when you think about all the time you're wasting, right? So I think that's the first objection one. I think we've addressed that one.
When you were talking and you were talking about social media, I thought, and even TV, when we get so consumed in the lives of others,
yes,
we actually sideline ourselves in our own life.
Yeah.
So we don't know, we know how much time we've had. We don't know how much time, we all have a termination date. So we don't know what that end date is going to be. And I know, Stephen, I'm always challenging people to show up boldly, kick down the door of your life and own it, and not be so timid, not be the wallflower.
Yeah, and that's kind of funny. Like if you think about like in dating and things, like when you're thinking about trying to be attractive to the opposite sex or the same sex or whoever you want to be attractive to, people get so you're thinking about what other people think about you, right? And what I realize as a way of understanding is like I've learned to stay in my frame. I know that's the best place for me to be. And anytime when I have anxiety and stuff, I've put myself in someone else's frame. What does this person think about me, this romantic partner, or even this colleague or this business associate? Oh my God, what do they think about me? You know what? I have no power. I've now given it out. But when I stay in my frame and I say, okay, I need to focus on me and what I'm working on, then I'm more attractive to other people, right? So that's another message is, like I've worked so hard on this that now this becomes an example of when I'm like worried about someone else and what they think about me, I'll say, okay, well, wait a minute. What am I doing in my life that needs my attention now? Right? What am I doing? Okay. And then I start getting it back into my frame. And then I don't really care what other people think. But it's just that like that little perspective thing, I think is helpful. Just think about staying in your own frame of mind. And when you're out of there, you're going to be in trouble.
I want to take this now to a very serious topic. So we know we've had the pandemic and who knows how long it's going to last. But there's also the second pandemic, and that's around mental health.
Yes. And
you mentioned that when you were able to quiet yourself from all the noise, I think you even mentioned that as the pandemic started, you went and ordered a onesie and you just kind of did all this binging and stuff in this onesie. And a lot of us got into that space. But what's real important, I think, again, from what you're writing with Ancient Futures, I read it as there's a message of hope that just because you're here, it doesn't define you. It doesn't mean this is the end of the journey.
Yes.
It's just this too shall pass. It's part of the process. Now, what do we do beyond that once we recognize it? What would you say to individuals who are really, there's some people really struggling right now with wondering, do I matter? Do I have purpose? What does this all mean? How do I show up in a way that I don't feel invisible any longer? And I know that's a lot to put on you, but
yeah, that is a lot. I would say that part of it is, being kind to yourself and understanding what is happening, right? So if you think about the pandemic and all of the mental health pressure that came on all of us just by being more isolated, having more fear, we've all had somewhat of a trauma of experience collectively. So I think just acknowledging that, part of it is that. Part of it is we've just been so affected by this environment that there's going to be mental health pressures. So it doesn't just mean I'm crazy just because, I haven't seen somebody or I want, more human interaction, right? So some of it is like, hey, some of this is normal that we have to reflect and accept and say, wow, this is, something that's happening to us. But then also realizing the blessings that you have for that too. Maybe you have more time to walk in nature, or maybe there's more opportunities that you didn't have before. So I would say kind of seizing those opportunities as well.
I love that. We're almost out of time, but I want to talk a little bit about for that person that is interested in your work with Ancient Futures. If they're with the first release, if there is one central message that you would want someone to walk away from with, what would that be?
I would say that even though the world around us is very chaotic and very convincing in telling us things about ourselves and putting perceived barriers around us, that I would say that ultimately, as a human being, your heritage is immortal, and the gifts and the knowledge you have are, all of us have them just by being born. So there is, like you said, LaWanna, there is always hope for you moving into the place where you want to be. That would be the central message, because the main character in this book is in a similar situation, and what he's able to do, I think, gives everyone hope that a change is just around the corner. Like, change can happen like that, so that's the hope. That's the dope life message. Is dope life is always right there.
Well, we know that you have a Kickstarter that's coming up.
Oh, really? Who said that? Was there a Kickstarter? What?
February 14th. Tell us a little bit about it. How can people be a part of it? Valentine's Day.
All right. Yeah. So am I going into my 5-minute deal here?
Yes, you are.
All right, everybody. So I'm really excited to be launching Ancient Futures on Valentine's Day because the core message of this book, there is a message of love here. It's a message of loving yourself. My main character's name is Valentino Cruz. And on Valentine's Day, you're going to be able to see what he does to try to dope his life and the adventure that he goes through, the people he deals with, the beautiful Dr. Kwa Adu that has a critical role in his life, the enigmatic professor that offers him a way to change his life in a new and revolutionary way, the entrance of the Watchers, the supernatural angels that gave forbidden knowledge to humankind. All of these crazy characters are in this book about Afro-punk assassins at the end of space-time. And I would love it if you would support the Kickstarter that is launching on February 14th. The link is going to be in the URL there, and the Instagram is ancientfutures.by7. And again, like I said, this book has something for everybody, and it's just a lot of fun. It's illustrated by an award-winning illustrator, Aaron McConnell, and we can put his link in the chat as well. And it really this book represents a 10-year journey for me of pulling this together and really challenging myself to bring Ancient Futures to life. So I just want to thank LaWanna and the Choose to Challenge for this opportunity. And I can't wait to see all of you in the Kickstarter and on the Instagram. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stephen. This has been amazing. I always enjoy talking to you. I'm excited to see
my pleasure.
All that this is going to be. So please follow Stephen on Instagram, ancientfutures.by7. Stay tuned. There's going to be a lot of buzz about Ancient Futures And also, the message that he was telling you, he was leaving a lot of golden nuggets about how you can live your dope life, i.e. your best life, be the best version of you. But first it starts with loving yourself and saying, I want to break out of this box, this paradigm that I am a product of, and I want to define what feels right and feels good for me. It's never too late to start, right, Stephen?
Amen. Amen.
Well, again, I want to thank you all for joining us for another edition of Choose the Challenge. Thank you, Stephen. And
Thank you, everybody.
to all of you, remember that when your vision for your life intersects with opportunity, success is inevitable. Until next time, be safe. Bye, everyone.
Peace, everybody.